Hi, everyone. My name is Maggie Rayland, and I am the Professional Development Manager in the Block Career Center. Today, I am super excited to introduce you all to Brie Reynolds with Flexjobs. We had the chance to submit some questions to Brie about Flexjobs and working remotely, and we are so excited to share her answers with you. So without further ado, here is Brie.
So first of all, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about remote jobs and the remote job market for students and recent grads. I am a career advisor by trade. I actually started my career working in a college career office. I was helping students and alumni with their searches. This was back in the early to mid 2000s, so well before remote work was a very popular thing, and certainly before it was something that most people are doing right now if they are working. I love working with students, love working with alumni, and came to Flexjobs after that position and started a career coaching program here. And so we have a team of coaches who help professionals who are outside of the college area navigate their careers specifically for remote work and flexible work. And so I came to Flexjobs because I needed that type of work. I needed to work remotely. My husband got a new job back in 2010, so I've been at Flexjobs for 10 years. And it was a job that would let us move around and travel every year, but I needed to work remotely in order to do that. And so I wound up finding Flexjobs and started out here in a part-time remote role. And just as the company grew, I grew sort of along with it. And so now we have this great career coaching program, and I'm happy to help people. So Flexjobs is a job search website. We specialize in remote and flexible jobs. And essentially, we offer the opportunity for people to find these jobs all in one place. So the way the flexible and remote job market works right now is there are many different types of flexibility, many different types of remote work, many levels. You know, some people work from home all the time. Some people work from home occasionally outside of the pandemic. That's what, normal times mean, that people are sometimes working from home, sometimes working in the office. And then there are those jobs that let you work from home all the time. So what our company does is we take all of those different listings from all over the web and careers pages, and we have employers come directly to us, and we post them all in one place to hopefully make it easier for people to find remote work and then other types of jobs that have flexibility. So things like flexible scheduling, freelance and contract types of work, part-time positions, and temporary work. And all of the flexibility has to be there. So that's the one main thing, is that all of the jobs on our site have flexibility. And I think it's something like 75 or 80% have remote flexibility in particular. So you can actually work from home doing these jobs. So why is it important for students? Really, in this time, this is such an unprecedented time to be either looking for an internship or a job. And I will be totally honest, at Flexjobs, we don't post internships. We are more focused on the full-time job search. Or even part-time job search, but not necessarily internships. It's more professional level jobs. But all of these types of jobs are being done remotely right now. And so a platform like Flexjobs can not only help you find those types of jobs, but in general, we try to help people learn how to be better job seekers in this job market. So the remote job market in particular, and then putting yourself out there for other types of flexibility as well. So that's why we hope we can provide some value, really getting people prepared to find remote types of jobs. The job application process for remote work is very similar to the in-office application process. So first, a company will put out a job listing for a remote job. And there are companies putting out job listings for remote internships as well. And they are looking for people to submit the same kind of information that they normally would for an in-office job. So things like a cover letter and a resume. You might have to submit some work samples or anything in particular that they're looking for, your hourly rate or the hours that you're looking to work or your earliest start date. There's all those little questions that an employer might have once you're submitting your application. And it's very similar to the traditional job market and job search. You'll either be emailing those materials to someone, or you might be submitting them online and uploading them into a system. And then the interview process is probably where it differs the most. So with a remote job interview, you are definitely going to be home or wherever you might happen to live right now. You're going to be doing those usually over phone or video interviews, mostly over phone though. I think it's assumed that a lot of companies would use a video interview, but most companies that hire for remote jobs still like to do a traditional phone interview, at least for that initial screening interview that most people have to go through. And so to set yourself apart in this, with that first step that you're taking with resumes and cover letters, on your resume, especially students right now, you have a big advantage in terms of the technology that you're used to using. So technology plays a really important role with remote work. When you are working apart from other people, you're working from home, they're working from home, communication tools are going to be the most critical thing that you can list on your resume. So if you already understand platforms like Zoom or GoToMeeting or Slack or anything that allows you to communicate back and forth with people in a meaningful way and build relationships and get projects done. So if you're a student, you're thinking about the projects that you're doing, group projects, things like that. And especially if you're doing them remotely right now, the communication tools, the platforms that you're using to get that done should all be listed on your resume in a communication section. So you can, or excuse me, a technology skills section. So you can actually talk about the technology skills that you have. If you're familiar with any other business applications or platforms, or even things like Microsoft Office, those should go on there as well in this technology section. But then going back to the experiences that you've had already that might help set you up for remote work. If you are remote studying right now, if you're doing your learning online, or you just finished up a semester doing that, definitely mark that down on your resume, you know, completed one full semester or one half semester of fully remote study. If you did really well and you got excellent grades, even though you were working or studying remotely, you should definitely put your GPA on your resume. Any group projects where you had to communicate and collaborate with other students or with professors, with some group to get something done, that should be detailed on your resume. So you can actually put that under your experience section or under your education section, depending on how big and robust the project was. Because we all know there are some projects that are pretty easy to do, and then there are some that are much more complicated. So if it was a pretty complicated, time-intensive process where you invested a lot of time and effort, you could put that into the work experience section or experience section of your resume and have that encompass both remote study experience and projects, any internships you have, part-time work, all that sort of stuff could go under one umbrella. So really playing up your technology skills, and any time that you are communicating and collaborating in a remote way on your resume looks really good for remote job applications. Yeah, to be successful in a remote job or a remote internship, the number one thing that you have to get really good at doing and really comfortable doing is communicating. Communicating with your boss, your manager, with your fellow workers or fellow interns, whoever you happen to be working with, be an open communicator. You want to be available when you're supposed to be. So there might be set hours that you're still supposed to work. Make sure that you are absolutely, you know, at your desk, available during those times. People will send you quick instant messages. You're expected to respond right away. That connectivity and instant communication is really important. Now, if people are communicating with you outside of those set hours, it's okay to wait until the next day to communicate with those folks. But you want to make sure communication is really your most critical skill as you're getting to be a good remote worker. Along with communication comes something that we like to call proactive communication or proactive questioning. And in a remote environment, your manager cannot see if you're struggling, if you're bored, if you're unfocused. They can't see all of these potential hurdles that you have to overcome as a new employee or a new intern. So you have to be able to, first of all, assess yourself and see how you're doing and how you're feeling, and then communicate that to your manager and your coworkers. If you're available to help, you know, make sure you're putting it out there. Hey, I've got some time this week. I finished up this project, or I would love to take on more, be asking for more. And you can do that over email. If you have a regular phone meeting with your manager, which I would definitely recommend, if they haven't set that up, that you request that. You can request, hey, could we meet once a week, just briefly for 30 minutes, 20 minutes, just to check in, see how things are going, and make sure you have enough to do. You really want to make the most of this time in this remote internship, because if your goal is to work remotely for your first job out of college, or if this is your first job out of college and your goal is to continue working remotely, you want to build a solid track record of being an excellent remote worker right now. So proactive communication, asking proactive questions, asking questions when you are uncertain of something. If you need more information, don't be afraid to speak up. It is far worse to sit quietly when you're a remote worker. People wonder what you're doing. People think maybe you're not working. We tend not to assume the best of people. It's just a normal human thing to think somebody's up to something or they're slacking off. So make sure you don't give people the chance to start forming assumptions about you. You have to be proactive in your communication. The other things for being a good remote worker include sticking to a set schedule, making sure you have a dedicated office space. So if you are living at home or with roommates, talk to the people you're living with and make sure they understand that this is an internship, this is a professional thing that you're doing or a job, and you need that dedicated office space, you need quiet time, whatever it is, work things out with the people that you're living with, and try to understand what motivates you to focus, because focusing is really difficult, even for somebody who's been doing this for 10 years like myself. Focusing on what to do, making sure you're sitting in your seat, getting your work done is a thing that you will have to continually push yourself on. And so you want to make sure that you understand what makes you focus, whether it's having a great to-do list, being really clear on what your next step is for a project or the work that you're doing, having some sort of set ritual that gets you into work, or a mantra where you even say something as simple as, I'm going to work now, or doing a walk around the block before you sit down at your desk every time to get into work mode. You want to make sure you have some things going for you that are going to help you focus over the course of the day and the coming weeks. There are a few different ways that companies measure remote work and support their workforces when they're working remotely. So first, let's talk about measurement. Companies that have remote workers who have had remote work for a long time and have a regular sort of policy and program around remote work, they're probably focused mostly on the results, the processes that a remote worker goes through and the results that they're getting, because they've learned as managers that if they can tailor those processes and they can make it really streamlined and simple for people to get their jobs done and have the equipment that they need and the information that they need and a good process in place, then the results are going to be good. And so they really look at processes and results. So you want to be involved in the process, especially if you're a new employee. Ask about processes. How do we do this? What's the protocol for that? Make sure that you're asking those questions. The other thing is the results. So what are you actually getting done? One of the hardest things to learn when you're first starting to work remotely is how to speak up for yourself and how to let people know that you're getting things done. And it feels like you're bragging. It's the same in a job interview when you have to talk about your best skills and your best experiences and all the things you're great at. It feels a little like bragging and it's not comfortable to do at first. So you have to be just really clear about, hey, I finished up this project, here's the result, or I talked to this client, here's what they said, and just be very matter of fact about it. You don't have to say anything more than, I got this done, I think it went well, or you could even be very critical about things too. Here's what went well, here's what I would do differently next time, here's where I have questions. You have to be very proactive about that sort of stuff. If your company has not been remote for very long, let's say they just went remote because of the pandemic, or they've just taken on a few remote workers, if this is very new to them, they may not be just measuring processes and results. They may also be focused on face time. So you have to figure out what type of environment you're in. Is it one where remote work has been around for a long time and they're really focused on processes and results? Or is it one where they haven't been remote for very long, and so they're focusing more on you being in your chair at work, available? And that's not to say that's a good way to focus on what a remote worker is doing, but it is a way that some companies measure remote workers is, are you available? Are you around? When I send you an email, do you respond back? When I send you a Slack message, do you IM me right back? So you have to see what kind of environment you are in. One of the things that you can do as you're starting is actually ask, how am I going to be measured? What's most important to you as a manager? How can I show you that I'm engaged and I'm doing my job? And get those answers from your manager and see what they like to see when it comes to your performance, because that will really help. Companies support their remote workforces in a few different ways. So some of it has to do with the equipment that you have in your home office. Some companies provide you with that equipment. Some will provide you with a stipend where you can pay for your own equipment and they will support that cost. They will take on that cost, or you can choose your own equipment. Some do neither of those, and it's up to you to set up your home office. So it's another question that you can ask, especially when it comes to the negotiation phase. Let's say you've been offered a job or something like that, and you're negotiating. Hopefully you're negotiating at least a little bit for your salary. I know the first few times, it's a little bit nerve-wracking. But one of the things you could ask about is, how does my home office get set up? Is that something I'm responsible for, or does the company help out with that? Other ways are, there are lots of social aspects to remote work that people don't think of. So really good remote workforces, remote companies are going to have social events for their remote workers to take advantage of. So for example, we've seen remote companies do happy hours. We've seen them do virtual trivia nights, things like that, that just engage remote workers and get you building relationships with people in a way that's not just work focused, but actually focused on life outside of work or interests that you have that aren't work related. So that's another thing to look for at companies, especially if you're considering a few different companies, is how do they support their remote workforces? How do they help people build relationships outside of their immediate teams? And what does that look like? What's the remote culture at this company? My advice for anyone who is trying to find work right now is, first, know that remote work is not going away. At Flexjobs, we have definitely seen both an increase in the number of remote jobs that have been posted during the pandemic, but also an increase in the number of people who are searching for remote jobs. So there is demand across the board. Companies want more remote workers. More workers want to work remotely. So the competition is there. It's not like this is a wide open space. There's definitely a lot of competition for remote work. So know that the best things you can do are really focus in your resumes and your cover letters on each individual job. The same for when you're applying for in-office jobs. You want to tailor your resumes, tailor your cover letters so that they really match the keywords in the job description that are you, that really jump out to you as being your skills, your experience, your qualifications. Those keywords should be written verbatim in your resume and your cover letter. The other things you can do are focus on companies that have a history of remote work. So I was mentioning before that companies that haven't worked remotely for a long time are not quite as good at managing remote workers as companies that have a history of remote work. And that's also true for companies hiring. If you are really set on getting a remote job, you want to make sure you're looking at companies that have histories of remote work, because they are still hiring. They've had fewer setbacks right now. They're more prepared to take you on and more likely to be hiring right now than a company who is just really starting to get their footing and trying to figure out what they look like over the next 3, 6 months, 9 months, a year. Most companies are going to have some remote component going forward until this is all done and we can all safely return to the office. So it's important. Those companies that have remote histories tend to be moving a little bit faster, and they're a little more on track right now. So those are just a couple of things that you can do to really increase your chances of finding a remote job or a remote internship in the time of the pandemic and beyond.
A big thank you to Brie for answering our questions today about remote work and Flexjobs. If you'd like more information about Flexjobs, I will link their website in the description below. And as always, please visit us at Career Services if you need help with your application materials, preparing for an interview. We are more than happy to help. Thanks.